Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a couple of SEC matchups. Texas heading over to Vanderbilt to play a huge one. Missouri heading down to Bama for what looks to be kind of a CFP playing game for them. I do have Texas and Alabama getting right in those games, but two very, very fun ones to watch, no doubt. But let's get into segment two here. And before we get in, very much appreciate everyone watching right now. It never goes unnoticed. Very, very fun to see a couple of those numbers start to tick up, and love that people are enjoying what I'm doing over here. It means the world to me. Cannot express that enough. But let's get into these games that are happening throughout this week. And we got some good ones. This is one that I think a lot of people are going to overlook, but you really should not. This is a huge game in the ACC as we move forward, because this is another game. It's going to have points. I can almost promise you that. This is going to be really, really fun. Syracuse, is third in the country in pass offense, 355 yards per game. Kyle McCord's doing work in that backfield. And then you have Eli Holstein playing one of the best football of anyone in the entire ACC. They're 14th in the country with 296 through the air. So we're going to see the ball slung around. I can promise you that. And if you love to see a couple of chaotic plays, I think this might just be the game for you on Thursday night. Not that Thursday night football, but at the end of the day, it's going to be really, really fun to watch this one. And neither defense is all that great at stopping it. Syracuse is 8th in pass defense, 236 allowed. Pitt is 95th. And did I say 8th? 85th, excuse me. And Pitt is 95th, 246 yards allowed. So this is going to be one that gets up and down. I can almost promise you that. And the quarterback battle is one that's really, really fun. It's two quarterbacks that coming into the season, if I told you Kyle McCord and Eli Holstein are going to be some of the stories of the ACC, you probably would have called me crazy. But the reality is, they're probably top 5, top 4 quarterbacks in the ACC right now, behind those two guys, Cam Ward and Cade Klubnik. And Eli Holstein playing really, really good football. One of the top quarterbacks in the ACC, and absolutely love watching him. So that's going to be a really fun battle, and one that I think we could get up. Both those guys could get over 300 yards in this game passing. But players to watch, Jackson Meeks has become a huge player for Syracuse. 459 yards on the season. One of those guys that can just make all the plays that you need him to. Whether it's a jump ball, whether it's, the more nuanced routes, whatever that looks like. He is very, very talented. Transferred over from UGA with Fran Brown, and he has really flourished in this offense and has become Kyle McCord's favorite target right next to Oronde Gadsden. So very much like this guy, and I think he adds a super important element to this team in explosivity. And then you got Derek McDonald on the other side, the leading tackler for this team in the middle of that defense. And when you look at Pitt, there are so many things you have to worry about that there's not one player on that defense that's any more important than the other. What I will say is he's going to get this next guy that I'm going to talk about a lot, and he is a load to deal with. And that is Desmond Reed. Desmond Reed has been one of the interesting stories around the country. If you have not watched this kid play football yet, absolutely do on Thursday. He is so much fun to watch. 835 all-purpose yards. He, I believe, is their second leading receiver as well as their leading rusher. So he's a very, very important player to this team and is playing some of the best football in the entirety of the ACC right now. Love this player, and he can change a game in a second. No two ways about that. And then you have Rashad Battle, a very, very talented player on the back end of that Pitt defense, has 4 pass breakups for this year, and frankly, that could be the difference in this game. Just what back end of this defense can make that one play, can make that one pass defense on a third down, or make that one pick, and we'll get into that in the keys to the game here, because setting the tone is going to be huge in this one. Neither of these teams are, I don't want to say can't play from behind, because they absolutely can, but they're very much teams of momentum. They can play a game where if they're rolling, if their offense is moving right along, they're going to be really, really hard to stop. If you get them a little bit stagnant, then you can kind of get them into a weird place, kind of like Stanford did against Syracuse earlier this year, and what West Virginia did at least early on in that game against Pitt. So it's definitely something to watch here. Who can get on the board first? Who can set the tone? Who can kind of set the pace of this game, whether that's with the run or the pass? Who can kind of set the pace of this game and get out in front early is going to be a huge moniker for who's going to be able to win it. And then Desmond Reed against LaQuint Allen is going to be huge to watch. The pass game is going to get all the attention. There's going to be tons of 7, 8 drop coverages that just make it really hard on these quarterbacks to find openings. that means these running backs are going to have to pick up the slack. Well, Quint Allen is one of my favorite players in the ACC, 449 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, and we talked about Desmond Reed, 494 on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Very, very talented player, and then obviously Desmond Reed adding that receiving aspect, as well as LaQuint Allen, just not nearly to the same level. Both are very important in this game and could just be the difference in this game, really. And then that one defensive play. We just talked about it with Rashad Battle. You just got to make one. I don't think this is going to be a game that is decided by a huge margin. I really do think it's going to come down to that one play. Who can make that one breakup on third or fourth down? Who can get that one pick? And Syracuse has 6 picks on the year. Pitt has 5. They're both +2 in the turnover margin. So not a lot to kind of take away from that of who will make that play, but I can almost promise you that that's what this is going to come down to. And when I look at the back end of these defenses, I tend to trust Syracuse just a touch more. I think Syracuse has enough guys on the back end to make the plays that they very much need to. Justin Barron is an incredible player on the back end of that defense, and I think Syracuse ends Pitt's undefeated season. I kind of hate to see it go, I'll be honest with you, but at the end of the day, I do think Syracuse gets this one done, and I think it's going to be a really, really fun one. No two ways about that, so definitely tune into that one. Leave Thursday Night Football in the rearview mirror because this is a very, very fun one. Unless you have 2 TVs, then get it all going and have a good time. But moving on to just a huge one. When you look across the landscape for this weekend, this might not be the one that fully jumps off the page with a ton of ranked matchups on Saturday. It definitely should. This could be as clear of a play-in game as you have the entirety of the season, because the reality is, let's just play out a hypothetical here where Navy plays Notre Dame this weekend, they lose, and then Army plays Notre Dame later on, and they lose. This is going to be the team that gets in. The winner of this game, I feel very confident. Now, they could obviously stumble the rest of the way, and then you have to figure out who would go. But at the end of the day, I do think this is one of those games where whoever wins this one, I would feel pretty confident betting on to make the CFP. Now, Army could beat Notre Dame and totally change that, but the reality is these are 2 really, really good teams, and UNLV has been rolling right along since falling to Syracuse, and frankly, in that Syracuse game, they were rolling right along offensively at least, and they beat Oregon State last week. Haj Malik Williams continues to really execute this offense at a very high level, and then on the other side, I don't have to talk about him too much. It is the Grim Reaper, Ashton Jeanty. He's an absolute problem to deal with, and he's one of those guys that do whatever you need to do. You can have the best run defense in the country, and Oregon has a really, really good one. He ran all over him. So I don't know if there's necessarily a way to outright stop him, but UNLV is going to have to try to, at the very least. And then there's one of those games that both these teams have been circling from the jump. There's no two ways. I think it's one of those games where you have Georgia, Alabama. They were circling it from the beginning of the season. Texas, Georgia. They were circling it from the beginning of the season, as well as Ohio State, Oregon, circling it from the beginning of the season. This is their game. This is maybe the G5 game of the year when you talk about these 2 teams and what they can do possibly going into the playoffs. So huge game, huge matchup over there in Allegiant Stadium, and we'll see who can come out on top. But a couple players to watch are Ricky White. Ricky White is absolutely incredible, and obviously he is a wide receiver. He's plenty good at that. I expect him to be playing on Sundays next year, no doubt about that. But also, he has 3 blocked punts on the year. There's no other team in the country that has more than 2. He is absolutely absurd. He's the best special teams player in the country and one of the best wide receivers in the country. So he's one of those guys that can change this game not only on the offensive side of the ball, but when you see him coming off the edge on those punt blocks, then definitely watch out because the game can change in a hurry. And then we got Jackson Woodard. He has his hands full, and he knows that going into this weekend. He is going to be the guy that is going to have to take down Ashton Jeanty a lot of the time because he's getting through the first gap. I feel very confident that he is going to find a way to get through that defensive line. I don't want to say easily, but he's going to do it. I feel good about that. And then you got to be able to meet him. If he gets out into open field in front of some of your DBs, they have no shot. Jalen Catalon can help you out with this a little bit to avoid that big-time play, but at the end of the day, Jackson Woodard is going to be hugely important and maybe, just maybe, the last line of defense against Ashton Jeanty in this game. And then we got to talk about Cameron Camper. This is a guy that has been entirely overshadowed throughout this year because of what Jeanty is doing in that back end. This is an NFL wide receiver. Very, very talented guy. A really, really good blocker. Can go up and get 50-50 balls. Is very, very talented all over the field. And when you're focusing on Ashton Jeanty, when you're bringing guys down into the box, you just need that one big play over top. And I think they can make it in this one. And it probably will be to Cameron Camper. And then I want to talk about Hassanin, a very, very talented defensive end for Boise State. 5.5 sacks on the year. He's actually coming over from Cairo, Egypt. So a very, very interesting story out there. And he's doing really, really good work for them coming off the edge. And if you want to get to this UNLV team, you're going to have to be able to get to Haj Malik Williams and either force him out of the pocket, but then you got to worry about his legs. So the defensive ends, linebackers for Boise State are going to have their hands full with this run game for UNLV. And on the other side, the UNLV run defense is going to be very interesting to watch because I don't know what you do. I'll be totally honest. I don't know what the fix is to stop this kid because the reality is people have stacked the box. People have gotten guys to spy him. People have gotten guys to just all-out rush and try to get there before he gets the ball. None of it works. The second he has the ball in his hands, he is going to be impossible to deal with. UNLV has the 25th best run defense in the country. I don't know if it matters. I'll be totally honest. I think you could have the number 1 run defense in the country. He's still probably going for $150 on you. So it's going to be interesting to watch this one. If they can just slow him down even slightly, keep him under 100 yards and you win the game. Keep him under maybe even 125 and you might be able to win the game. And then on the other side, you got to be able to lengthen drives. One thing about the Boise State offense is, yes, you are running the ball because you have that guy. He's also breaking a lot of big-time runs, and it's keeping your defense in some precarious situations throughout the game. So who can have that game where, or who can have that play, or that drive, that you go 8 minutes and you run 14 plays? I mean, Boise State averages 6 more plays per game than UNLV, so they're a little bit more slow-moving than UNLV is, but at the end of the day, neither of these teams move all that slowly in this game, and you're going to have to figure out a way to just kind of slow things down just a touch. It doesn't need to be perfect by any means, but give your defense that one extra breather to get back out on that field and get the one stop that could change this game. And then composure. This is a huge game, and no one needs to be told that in either of these facilities, whether it's the players, the coaches, the training staff, it does not matter. Everyone understands that this is the game they need to win if they want to make the CFP. Who can kind of rise to the moment? Who can, stay disciplined, not miss tackles, not miss assignments? Which quarterback can not get a little bit happy feet like we saw Quinn Ewers last week against Texas? Got a little bit, or against Georgia, got a little bit of happy feet and things kind of fell apart. Whoever can avoid that the best is going to be able to win this game. And frankly, I just can't pick against, oh no, I put them in the wrong place. Boise State, I have winning this game. I hate to do that, but Boise State, I do have winning this game 38-35. I flipped them when I was making this graphic. I very much apologize, but I do have Boise State. Maybe they're sending me a sign here and telling me to pick UNLV, but I'll roll with Boise State right now, and I will take my lickings for this afterwards, but totally my fault. Definitely put this graphic together just a little bit backwards, but I do have Boise State winning, getting that huge win, and Ashton Jeanty kind of putting a little bit of a stamp on that Heisman campaign that he's been on, but a little bit of a mix-up for myself there, and maybe it'll come back to bite me, not just taking it for what it is, but at the end of the day, I do think Boise State wins that game. I do think Syracuse ends Pitt's season on Thursday, or undefeated season on Thursday, so a couple of really, really fun matchups that you might be overlooking just a little bit because they're in the weekdays, you're not necessarily fully into the swing. You're going to want to tune into those ones. They're very, very fun games and will have plenty to do with what the CFP looks like down the road. But let's take our second break here. And when we come back, I just want to get into some chaos teams. We're getting towards that part of the year. We're getting to kind of the home stretch, right? And I want to get into 2 teams from every conference that I think can just throw a couple of wrenches into the work if they can continue to handle business and maybe beat a couple of teams that you do not expect them to beat. So we'll break it down right after this, so stick with us.